once I launch into it, I can get all enthusiastic. So back to Charlotte. She completed her English with creative writing degree at Swansea University in 2013. And her biog explains that having grown up as a mixed race woman, she's confronted racial and sex barriers inside and outside of education. And this is a bit I'm really inspired about as well. While she was still at school, Charlotte spoke at a government head teacher conference about the gender pay gap. So like, get started early. That's what I think is brilliant. So Charlotte will tell us a little bit more about that. And joining Charlotte today, we've got Kezia Bikebi-Nitu, who is a Congolese woman born and raised in London, but moved to Wales for university in 2018. And Kezia is currently completing her degree in medical engineering, where she's interning as a product development engineer at Pfizer. What a year to be doing that. So it'll be exciting to hear more from you, Kezia. And our final speaker joining us today is Modupe Sobanwa. And Modupe is a student also currently completing her Master's of Engineering degree in Chemical Engineering at Swansea. And unlike the others who grew up in the UK, Modupe grew up in Lagos in Nigeria before moving to the UK in 2010. So she's got a slightly different story to tell, which will be fascinating. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Charlotte, who's going to lead us through the session. Thank you, Charlotte.
No worries. Oh, hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having us today. Really appreciate it. Hopefully you can all see my screen and the PowerPoint. Yeah, fab, that's good. Love it when things work. As I said, well, you've just given a wonderful introduction, Wendy, but my name's Charlotte Ajomale-Evans. My pronouns are she/her. I have been at Swansea for a good 11 years now. And although I sort of did my degree in English with creative writing, I now work for the College of Engineering. And I am also chair of the BAME network over in the college. So Kezia, you'd like to give yourself a very quick intro?
Hi everyone, my name is Kezia. I study at Swansea, have been since 2018. I started off doing a healthcare science course called Sleep and Respiratory Physiology. Quite a mouthful, but I was heavily encouraged to do so by the very great lecturers and professors I met at Swansea. But through my experience, in Swansea and different barriers that I met, I did change onto medical engineering, and I'm currently interning at Pfizer, which is an amazing opportunity, as a product development engineer. So loads of medical devices and loads of vaccine politics that I'm surrounded in right now. So yeah.
Modupe, go ahead.
Hi everyone, my name is Modupe. I am going into my 4th year of chemical engineering at Swansea. I've been studying in Swansea since 2017. I also did a year in industry, and I'm currently completing an internship at Procter & Gamble as a manufacturing intern. And yeah.
Thank you both. Okay, so just to sort of like take you very quickly through a couple of bits of terminology. So you'll see the term BAME appearing a couple of times in these slides, and we'll probably use that. It's one of those terms that I think generally is used to describe all people of colour, and that shouldn't really be used, I think, except for data sets. So I'm going to try and stay away from that as much as possible, except when talking about the network, which ironically I chair, and it's the BAME network. So other sort of terms that are used, ethnic minorities is quite a common one that we'll sort of probably mention today. But actually ethnic minorities, when you think about the people who make up the Black, Asian and minority ethnic kind of groups, actually make up a global majority. So the term I will try to use today is minoritized ethnicities, which basically shows the action is being done to people like myself, rather than, you know, us choosing to be minoritized, if that makes sense. Okay, so I'm going to give a little bit of a background of the sort of issue that we're facing currently. Within the UK, only 7.8% of UK engineers are from Black, Asian or minority ethnic backgrounds, which obviously is a very, very small percentage. And similarly, you only have 12% of the engineering workforce in the UK that is female. So if you think about the fact that obviously 50% of women make up the population of the UK, it should definitely be a lot higher in that respect. And obviously we're still lacking quite a lot of minoritized ethnic individuals as well. Alongside that, then if you're looking at the actual environment people are working in, 85% of the people who are minoritized ethnic said that they've had assumptions made about them based on their ethnicity or nationality within their workplace. And also only 15% of engineering employees are actually making an active effort to sort of retain women in engineering. So it's obviously quite a big problem that not enough businesses are doing enough to make a nice sort of space for people to work who are maybe not white males. And that's something that we need to be addressing. So then going down to university level, we have got 6.2% of UK domiciles. So this is just students who live in the UK who come into university are from a minoritized ethnic background. So that basically shows us that we have got a reasonable number coming in. And then of those, we have 27% of people who are graduating from UK universities. However, you then look at that previous statistic of the fact there's quite a big drop there between the number of students who are graduating versus the number of people who are actually working in the sector. And then if you're looking at the intersectionality of individuals who are minoritized ethnic and female, only 2% of the UK workforce sort of fits into that bracket. So it's not the best thing in the world, essentially. So it's definitely something that we need to be looking at. So next thing we're going to say is we've got lived experiences. Obviously, previously when I presented this, I did it on my own, and I'm so glad that I've got Modupe and Kezia today to kind of bring forward their own experience. So as it was said earlier, so Modupe, if you'd like to go first and just tell us, I know Wendy sort of touched on this a little bit, but about, you know, your time sort of coming over to the UK and all of that kind of thing. Is that all right?
Yes, of course. So I grew up in Nigeria up until the age of 11, and I moved to the UK, Suffolk specifically, and I got into studying chemical engineering through my mainly through the experiences of my dad and my sister. So my dad is a mechanical engineer by trade, and my sister is also a chemical engineer. Initially, when I moved to the UK, I really wanted to be an accountant because coming from Nigeria, that was one of the professions that was seen as being viable, like gave you the best opportunities per se. So I really wanted to be an accountant, just I think mainly for the money. But then coming to the UK, I got a bit more practical experience, and I realized doing practical work makes me happy. I quite like being hands-on. So through the advice of my dad and my sister, I went on a Head Start course where I was able to explore all the different types of engineering the uni had to offer. This was Imperial College at that time. And from there, I decided I would do engineering, but I wasn't quite sure what branch of engineering I wanted to do. So when I was applying for my during the A-levels, and I was applying for what uni I would choose and what course I would like to study, I started off applying for mechanical engineering because most of my experiences to date at that point was to do with mechanics and mechanical engineering per se. But then whilst writing my personal statement, I realized I actually didn't like mechanics. I could do it, I didn't enjoy it, I didn't find joy in it. So again, talking to my dad and my sister, I found out, I knew about chemical engineering, but I found out a lot more about chemical engineering, and I decided to apply for that. And honestly, that is one of the best decisions I've made so far, because I truly enjoy studying chemical engineering and everything that pertains to it. So in that sense, I've spent half of my life here in Nigeria and half of my life here in the UK. So I have had a very different experiences from both sides, and that's me.
And then Kezia, I know you gave a little bit of an intro earlier, but go ahead.
Thank you. Very similar to Modupe's story. My family were much the driving force to me kind of looking into STEM, going to uni. They were kind of the people that encouraged me the most. And I'm born and raised in London, but my parents are Congolese and I'm Congolese. So they came a year before I was born. So English was the biggest barrier when I was in primary, going up to secondary, because I would be speaking to my parents in Lingala at home. So a lot of the time with education and school, I didn't really know which way to go. I never really saw myself doing STEM when I was younger. for a multitude of reasons. I was never really encouraged to at school, more so at home, because when you come from an African household, you're either going to be a lawyer, a doctor, or an accountant, and that's literally the law. So I guess through like my experiences at school, my grades, I knew I was good enough to do it, but it was finding a degree to do. So in 2018, when I was kind of sorting out my UCAS, picking unis, I came and visited Swansea for the beach, but then ended up meeting Alex Perkins, who runs one of the healthcare science courses at Swansea. He was really, really fundamental in my choice of picking Swansea and picking the healthcare science course. It's NHS funded. It would have been a lot of a commitment because I would be working on placement for about 60% of the time. But just through his belief in me and us having various conversations over the summer, I picked to come to Swansea and did a year of that course. At the end of that year, I did change courses due to just a various amount of issues that I faced in that year. But I definitely found that the pastoral care and the kind of support I got at Swansea was better than I've ever had throughout my school life, which pushed me to do medical engineering, which, yeah, didn't think I'd be here. Really, really glad. Finished my second year and then got myself a placement at Pfizer. So I won't be graduating or starting my third year journey until next September, but I'm really, really glad regardless.
Brilliant. I'm so glad. And then finally, kind of coming on to myself. So I thought it would be really interesting because I obviously did a degree that was not STEM related, but I grew up in Sussex. I lived in the UAE for a couple of years, so I sort of did schooling over there, of Nigerian heritage. But I thought it'd be very interesting to kind of draw a comparison between my journey and how I ended up doing a BA instead of a BSc, versus, you know, Kezia and Modupe, and just see sort of like the differences, especially as up to the point of A levels, I was still doing maths, I was still doing English, and I was at the same grade for both at the end of AS levels. So yeah, I thought that could be a nice like little exploration there. So just very quickly, I'm going to sort of like take my sort of like BAME network hat off and put my recruitment hat on. So as my day job, I work in student recruitment for the Faculty of Science and Engineering. So I'm just going to talk you through the sorts of things that we look for in order to recruit students. So the first thing is our subjects. So we're always looking for the right GCSEs and good grades at GCSE level. And we're also looking for the same thing at A level. So in order to basically get yourself onto a STEM course, you need to know about 4 years earlier exactly what you're trying to do and work really hard at the right subject. Next thing we're going to look for is a personal statement that is well written and shows a good level of experience. So that's quite an integral part as well of our recruitment process. In order to have that sort of good experience and also to lead yourself towards STEM, you're going to need to explore the different careers available to you. So that'll be through, you know, exploring your strengths as an individual, investigating your options, potentially having work experience, and then having like a good network of people around you to support your sort of decisions. Again, going back to that sort of personal statement thing with good experience, we'll look for work experience definitely, but we also look for people with a good range of skills and a good sort of range of interests, just to show that they're not just sort of a one-dimensional person. We want to see a really strong interest in a subject, and for that you're going to have exposure to that subject, and also really good quality teaching. The amount of times it come across to me that teaching actually matters. You know, if you have a really inspirational teacher, then that will sometimes pull you towards the subject. So that's a really big thing to get you to uni. And then the last thing is sort of system understanding. So if you are, for example, the first in your family to go to university, or, you know, you just need to understand the process of applying for finance and knowing, you know, how to go to accommodation and all of those sorts of things, having the full understanding of all of these aspects of what is expected of you to be able to come onto a STEM course is quite a big thing. So looking at the black journey to STEM, so this is where hopefully I'm going to get Kezia and Modupe to do a lot of talking. So what I've done is I've highlighted in yellow all the areas that when I was sort of initially speaking to Kezia and Modupe about their experiences and also thinking about my own, where our skin colour basically played a part in our journey. So basically every single one of those could be a very big influential section. So I'm going to very quickly hand over. So basically looking at, for example, isolation under the sort of subjects, we're going to start with that. So Modupe and Kezia, can you tell me a little bit about what your sort of class makeup was in terms of sort of ethnicities while you were at school?
Yes, of course. So during my pre-GCSE levels towards GCSE, I remember coming straight from Nigeria, this foreign kid, and I didn't think much about it. My parents didn't think much about it because my mom, actually, because I came with my mom, my dad. So my mom was essentially living as a single parent in the UK. So when I enrolled into school, this is pre-GCSEs where you get put into different sets for your maths and English. So I was immediately enrolled into the lower sets for English and maths. And I understand students in their year 6 do SATs, which determines what sets they get put in, but I wasn't given the option of doing an exam or test to see what my levels were. So immediately there was already that covert racism Charlie has put there, of just determining my levels rather than testing me to see what levels I was at. So that was pre-GCSE, but obviously because I was in the lower set, I started up in the lower set, I had to work my way up to the middle set and high set before my GCSEs. And then when it got to doing my GCSE, so like year 9, 10, I was still in the middle set for maths, even though I knew my maths was really good, but because of my previous, because of what I started with. So again, it took time for me to work up to the higher set, and I didn't get into higher set maths until year 10, when obviously having new teachers, they realized, oh, my levels were much higher than middle/lower set maths. So again, so that was just something off the bat that kind of led over the years. And I think from that sort of experience, it knocked my confidence down, because I knew I was good at maths, I knew I was good at English, but being told by teachers and professionals that, oh no, you're in lower set, you're in middle set, without even testing me, was quite deflating to my confidence. So that was my experience in terms of covert racism at the beginning of my educational journey in the UK. I'll hand that to Kezia if she wants to say something else.
Yeah, Kezia, do you have anything to also add to that? Because I know obviously you went to school in London, whereas obviously Modupe was in Suffolk, I was in Sussex, which was very, very white. So what was your sort of experience like in terms of, covert racism, isolation, that kind of thing?
So yes, I went to school in London. I went to an all-girls school for my secondary experience. And throughout secondary school, there was obviously a massive mix. I went to a multi-faith school. So there was a mix of girls at the school, all different faiths, all different ethnicities, but the majority of our teachers were female and were white. So we didn't have as many male teachers in the school. There was probably 3 at one time. So it was a strong base of white female teachers. And similar to Modupe, but not obviously in the same extent, I was moved down sets, not because I wasn't smart enough, but as a punishment. In school, a lot of the girls who were black were seen as the troublemakers, the ones that would cause trouble. So if the teacher didn't really like what was going on in the class, regardless if it was you or not, a lot of us were moved down sets. So there was a time before my GCSEs where I was meant to be in set 1 for my science, some of my English, my maths, but I was moved to set 3 because a report that was made during a week, and it took my older sisters who had been to school previously to come in and argue the case, because my mum's English isn't the best and she didn't know what was going on. During primary school, I also had some issues in terms of being discouraged with the language I speak. So if you speak French, if you speak Portuguese, they would encourage you to get involved to speak in that. But at home, I speak Lingala. So that's the language that is from Congo. And a lot of the times it was really hard for me to be at home speaking Lingala to my parents, and then be at school speaking English to my friends and to the teachers, so it was always quite a difficulty because the teachers would always mention it to my parents. So it was something that I had to really work on and kind of switch off, which wasn't very easy because being at home and being like 6, 7, 8, trying to convey schoolwork to your parents when English isn't their first language, and the teachers aren't really encouraging you to use your language wasn't the easiest. But I'm really glad that I had my sisters along the way, because they encouraged me to work 20 times harder than everyone else. They encouraged me to really push myself in school, because if it wasn't for them, I don't think throughout my primary school or secondary school time, I would have felt as supported. I definitely would have felt isolated, kind of similar to what Modupe was saying.
Yeah, exactly. So I think it's very telling, even to the level of, you know, being put in a lower set just because of certain very subtle kind of covert racism. Those sorts of attitudes and assumptions have come from somewhere, and those will carry on into people's careers. Like Modupe said, it damaged confidence, and it takes a long time to rebuild that. You know, personally, from my kind of experience, I did have fairly similar sort of things. In the level of, you know, the working really hard. My mum always told me I was going to have to work harder than everyone else. Certainly the recognition side of things, I was pretty much on a par with all of my white friends in terms of academic achievement, but I was never ever given awards or kind of the recognition that would normally kind of they would get. So I remember in my last assembly in year 11, they were giving out awards for all of these subjects, you know, most improved and best performer and, you know, most enthusiastic and things. And I was sat in a row with my friends, and every single one of them was called up to get an award except for me. But I was sat there thinking, if they give me one, it will ruin my memory of secondary school, because I've always remembered being good at everything but never being kind of rewarded for that. So, you know, that was just my sort of memory and my understanding. Again, you can't really put it down. You can't definitely say it's because of my skin colour, but that's sort of how I felt. And also similar to that, sort of on my sister's experience, she got the best results in her year for GCSE, and she at my school sort of did an award for governors, basically where they give the highest achiever the sort of governor's award. It's very sort of prestigious. And when she was revealed to have the best GCSE results, they actually called a governor's meeting to discuss whether or not they could give her the award. Because she was a female, first of all, she was mixed race, and then thirdly, she was also from a sort of single parent household, which to them, I think, all signalled signs that she potentially cheated to get to where she was. Luckily, some of her sort of friends' parents, who were again all white, stood up for her, and they wrote to the governors and said, you know, give her an award. She's worked really blooming hard, and she managed to get there. But it's that kind of idea I think a lot of people have that are multi-layered and just kind of cause problems going forwards. And also on the level for Kezia, when she said about, you know, languages and how that impacted, that's exactly the sort of thing that we look for in a personal statement. You know, we love seeing people who can speak different languages. And as wonderful it is if you can speak French, actually speaking something like Lingala is an interesting thing to read. It's one of those things when we are actually trawling through all the personal statements, that makes someone stand out. So that idea of being discouraged so early on is an actual influential kind of part of going to university. And, you know, alongside that, you know, there's the level if English isn't your first language, which, you know, for a lot of students, they might speak one language at home, exactly like Kezia, and another language somewhere else. It can be quite difficult to write a personal statement that is fluid and that, you know, will sell you to a university. So, yeah, that's definitely a big sort of factor. So, right, I'm going to move on to career guidance now. So if I can just throw this over. So Modupe, if you can talk me through, because yours I think is by far an incredible example of all of the career guidance you've got. Where did it come from? And, you know, who gave it to you and what sort of avenues did you explore?
Yeah, definitely. So like I previously mentioned, a lot of my career guidance came from my family. So my dad, my sisters, in fact, my whole family, because my family is just a family of STEM. So my mom's a nurse. My other sister is a microbiologist. One's a food nutritionist, and then chemical engineers, mechanical engineers. So yeah, so definitely my family supported me in making a decision as to what I wanted to study. Where I wanted to study was mainly my decision, but they encouraged me. I think my sister actually encouraged me to go to Swansea because I believe she applied for Swansea as well, but she just didn't choose it. But yeah, so there's that support, and also definitely my friends whilst I was in school as well. So I was lucky enough to make quite a multicultural mix of friends. Like I said, I lived in Suffolk in a village. It's very would you say very dominated by white people, should I say? But I was actually lucky enough to have a mix of friends. So my friends to date are like from the Philippines, from other parts of Africa, from Europe, and all of that. So they were very instrumental as well in helping me decide my career path and what I wanted to study at uni. And then moving on to uni, I joined this group called the Black Young Professionals, BYP, and it was really helpful as well to see people like me, should I say, how far they had gone in their careers. And it was also good to see that they had experienced somewhat similar experiences to myself or to Charlotte's or Kezia's, but still they were able to overcome such challenges and become leaders, should I say, in their place of work. So I made sure to tap into that by joining societies like that and just listening to people's experience. And also, I think recently, like I mentioned before, I completed a year in industry. And whilst I was there in my year in industry, I worked at Tata Steel. I'm sure many of you would be familiar with. It's not the most it's not the best female friendly profession because it's heavy, it's heavy, it's dirty. But actually, whilst I was there, even though the plant itself, the site was dominated by males, and it was quite obvious in the fact that one, there were no toilets for women on site. You had to go back to the offices to use the toilet, which was ridiculous. But actually, whilst I was on my place, I actually had a female manager, and on my team we had the most amount of women on the team apart from HR. So that was really inspiring to see, to know that, okay, even in an industry like this, engineering per se, there is still someone like my manager who's worked their way up. I also have my colleagues as well who are like females. There is still space for us. There's plenty of space for us, and that definitely helped, again, boost that confidence in the career path I've chosen, knowing that, regardless of if I'm in a male-dominated environment, I can still make my views. I can push my views out there, push my opinions out there, and say what I really think without feeling intimidated, because there are people out there like me, female, Black, who have done it and are thriving in the place of work.
Amazing, thanks, Modupe. Kezia, as well, could you give us a little bit of an overview of your kind of career guidance at school? Was there kind of like any kind of push in any way sort of towards STEM careers or anything like that?
Yeah, on that aspect, I do want to add that career guidance, I think, growing up, especially when you're a child, is really important. It should be something that is really put at the forefront, because you do want to be able to get involved and see it a profession for yourself. Unfortunately, at school, I didn't get much career guidance. My school used to have an incentive called Gifted and Talented. I'm sure a lot of people would know. There's like a kind of system at a school where those who achieve good grades get to go on certain trips. So they may be able to go and meet lawyers from a law firm, or they may be able to sit in assembly with a guest speaker. Despite having really good grades throughout school and being in top sets throughout school, it was more to do with teacher recommendation. So if the teacher thought you would be eligible to be joining one of those gifted and talented trips, you'd be allowed. But I was never picked for any, kind of similar to what Charlotte's sister went through. Even when people were like, Kezia is getting really good grades, she should be allowed, someone at the top would turn around and be like, no, it doesn't look right, it doesn't seem right, there's a different girl who should be chosen for it. So that was quite discouraging during school, that, you know, regardless how hard I tried, I was never really put forward to getting involved and seeing different career paths. Hence why I think going into sixth form, when I moved school, I didn't really have an interest in uni. I didn't really have an interest in further education because of how quite discouraging my experience was in secondary school and primary school. So when I did go to sixth form, I picked a kind of range of A-levels. One of the A-levels I picked was chemistry. It was very hard, but I was really driven to get the grades because I still did want to potentially pursue a degree in science because I did so well in my GCSEs. But my A-level chemistry teacher would always say stuff like, you know, it's a bit too much pressure to go into a science degree. You may not fit in a science degree. Like, you should think about a degree where you're able to do something like business management or something where you're able to, you know, talk because you're good at talking, which I know I'm very good at talking. But I obviously enjoy helping people. I enjoy going and finding solutions. I'm very much a problem solver, but my teacher at A-levels kind of had the same thought process as my teachers in secondary and primary. Like, it may just be too much for you. But I was the only person told that. My white counterparts in my secondary, in my sixth form class, and my A-level sixth form class for chemistry was pretty small. They were all told different things. So I do think having that role model kind of push is really instrumental to what choices you make. And it wasn't until I came to Swansea in 2018 and visited was I given the encouragement to pick a course. And even after things with that course didn't go well, because I was racially attacked at uni in my dorm, I went for a really bad mental health kind of situation from the summer of 2019. But I was still encouraged by the engineering office where Charlie works to go ahead and make a choice. Like, they really pushed me to kind of start from fresh, go to career fairs, speak to different departments instead of quitting and so becoming a statistic, trying to start from scratch. And that's what I did. Even though all my friends and everyone in my year group moved on to second year, I started first year again and spoke to the engineering team, spoke to all the different departments. Everything I should have been encouraged to do in sixth form, I wasn't. I did at the end of my first year. And then I met Harry Aurora, amazing person again, who encouraged me to do medical engineering. So I guess it's kind of strange that I was given career support at the age of 18, 19 and not at the age of, 11, 12, 13, when I probably should have been. So yeah, that's kind of what my experience was in and out of school. And I do think it would have been, I guess, a lot easier for me, but I really hope that school systems do change for like the future people who are of different ethnicities, who aren't just English, to have that support, because it is really, really hard when you see everyone around you getting something different to what you're getting. So yeah, like, that's why I'm really grateful that I picked Swansea in the first place, because being at Swansea really pushed me to see my potential, something that I didn't see when I was in school.
Thank you both. Yeah, I mean, I must admit, I was pretty similar in terms of actual school kind of careers advice. I remember we had a careers library where they basically had sort of like a portfolio on every kind of career you could think of, but it was kind of up to us to go and look at those. So for a while I wanted to be a games designer because I liked playing video games, and then realised it wasn't quite so fun designing the games as playing it. And then other than that, I was thinking of, there was one push in my school for sort of certain groups of us to go towards architecture, and I was selected for that, but it didn't really interest me that much. And again, architecture, although it could be a sort of science, it's also got a bit of art in there, and it's a bit of a mix. But actual STEM push, there was never anything. In terms of role models, I had one black maths teacher, and I remember him still. His name was Mr. Agwebe, and he was brilliant. But he sort of disappeared off the face of the earth, and that's one thing. So yeah, but that's as it goes. Not the best, but yeah, it was kind of the same sort of thing. I didn't have any kind of visual representations. The only actual push I got as career guidance was to go towards teaching. And that's not really where I wanted to be. I knew that children were hard to deal with, and I was not up for that challenge. So, going through school, that was pretty much my experience. Going to college, there was no real career guidance at all. We had a personal tutor who talked about the things that we were interested in. And ultimately that basically led, because I said I liked reading, to me doing English. All the push was towards English or towards law or, you know, something along those sorts of lines. So again, I didn't really get that kind of push towards STEM, and no one in my family, well, several people in my family did do STEM subjects, but all of them were white males, and they were all kind of like on the outskirts of my family rather than kind of close influential contacts. So what we'll do now is we'll move on to extracurricular activities and interests together, because I'm conscious of time and I want to make sure people have time for questions. So with, you know, in terms of mine, my exposure for interests was based on things like plays, for example. There's a lot of theatre and reading, music. I did pottery and things like that as a young sort of girl. So there was a lot more, I think, of sort of softer, I suppose, skills rather than more technical ones. And that sort of, I think, then fed into the sort of activities I did. So I joined a theatre club, you know, and that kind of thing that actually influenced where I went with my extracurricular activities to be able to back up, you know, the different sort of skills that I had going towards university. Not to mention, there was a lot of kind of like overt racism and covert racism that went on around my area in terms of letting me have access to certain things. So Kezia and Modupe, did you have anything sort of similar? You know, did your interest feed into a sort of STEM-looking career?
Yes, for me, my family isn't of the arts, should I say. So a lot of my extracurricular activities were based on STEM. So joining a coding club or joining a project club where you have to design certain things. So that was a lot of my experiences were based on that. And in terms of like my experiences whilst in these clubs per se, there was some sort of covert racism. So I remember in my GCSE days, I finally, when I was kept into the higher set, I was chosen to join this this group of students who were preparing for a maths competition. And I remember whilst we were preparing, or even during the competition, I would get given my set of questions. I would answer them, but before I could submit them, the other team members would check, and they would always have to check. They would always second guess my answers, saying, "Oh, I think we should check before she submits." And many a times, it was my answers were correct, and it just allowed us to waste time. Even like I knew my answers were correct, but they themselves weren't trusting enough of my answers. And again, going back to what I said before, that sort of experience again wasn't good for my confidence, because then I would start second guessing, like in terms of like academics, I'll start second guessing my answers and what I was doing, what I was writing down. So there was that certain covert racism to that. And yeah, so in terms of other curricular activities as well, I remember when I tried to join sports clubs, I was suggested basketball because lots of Black people play basketball, even though my hand-eye coordination is the worst. I can't play basketball. And also athletics, so running. So there was a very big push from my lecturers for me to not lecturers, for my teachers, for me to join the athletics club, and which I did, and I was fairly good at it. But you could tell they needed. So I had another friend who was Black as well, and they just, even though we'd never trained before in our lives, when it came to times where they needed people to join competitions, they would come to the two of us, even though we hadn't had any sort of professional training, and it was just a push towards athletics, and no one really asked us, "Oh, do you want to try? What do you actually want to do in terms of extracurricular? Do you want to learn how to play rugby?" Which was an option, or any other sport, but we were just always pushed towards basketball and athletics, which wasn't exciting. I mean, I enjoyed them, but I knew in my heart of hearts that this isn't what I enjoyed. And later on, I found out I actually preferred to play badminton, which I did. So that's my experience in terms of extracurricular activities at school.
Amazing. And Kezia, how about you? So I know you had a bit of an interest in sort of sports and things like that. So how did that influence your kind of choice of university course?
So I am very sporty, have been since since the day I came out, I guess. I love to dance. I enjoy dancing a lot. Congolese music is very danceable, I'd say. The music, the sounds, the way they mix the songs, it's probably where I found my love for dancing. But very similar to Modupe, in school, every single athletics event I was running. Like, even if I hadn't trained for years, I was running, which I guess was nice because it was something that the teachers believed I could do, but it was the only thing the teachers believed I could do. So that was quite sad to see, and definitely in the secondary school days, because I actually have dipped my toe in a variety of different sports. I used to cheerlead, I used to do trampolining, I used to play netball, and even though I was very good at those sports and those categories, I would not be able to afford to buy the netball kit or to go to the cheer games because they were very expensive, and my parents couldn't fund me to do that. But the athletics game was by our school, and you only had to pay about it's like about £3 to go and join to do the competition, and then the team, if they thought you were good enough, would fund you. So I think the school thought it'd be better for me to exercise my kind of energy into athletics than get my heart set on going to netball if I couldn't afford the add-ons of playing netball. So I do think when it comes to extracurricular, finances do play a massive part, because a lot of these extracurricular classes students have to pay for, and not all students can afford that. So it would have been nice if my school had an incentive for those who parents don't make above the 25 or 15,000 pound mark, or if there was an incentive for those who are on free school meals. But at the time, my school didn't have that. So I guess with extracurricular, with my love for sport and just my love for activity, I did push myself to look into science. And my mother also has a terminal disease, so I always knew that I wanted to work in the healthcare field. I didn't think I'd become a doctor because I didn't think I could deal with that, but I definitely did want to work in that sort of environment, like making a difference, helping those who are less fortunate, especially because being Congolese, I know that back home there isn't a healthcare service like we have here, like the NHS. There isn't those facilities for people who, like ourselves, get sick, because every human gets sick. So I did want to do a degree that had to do with my passion. So I think being interested in science from a young age, and that combined with sports, kind of did push me to pick medical engineering in the end. I guess, you know, it is kind of hard if you can't kind of engage in those extracurricular activities, because finances is a barrier for that.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's you know, as you say, finance is a huge thing, but also the support you get. So if you, like Kezia said, having to travel to and from somewhere, if your parents are both working full time or they can't afford to get you from A to B, it's so much harder. You know, my mum was a single mum, and she was trying to get me and my sister to all of our extracurricular activities across like a very rural area. It's not necessarily easy to do. So it's all about, you know, those opportunities that you've got around you. And that is, I think, something that comes into play, especially I grew up in a very affluent area, but a lot of people don't. And if they haven't got those opportunities, there's not that investment in their area, then it can really limit the sorts of things that you would have then to write in a personal statement about your extracurricular activities and your interests. So the last thing we want to talk about is Modupe, I think, has got a really good example of this, which is sort of like understanding the system. So Modupe, your sister, when she sort of, well, when you both moved over from Nigeria, can you tell us a little bit about the experience that she went through in terms of guidance and things like that?
Yes, of course. So when I moved from Nigeria, I moved with my sister, who's just 2 years older than I am. So it meant that when I moved into year 7 and she moved into year 10, which is where you choose your GCSE subjects. Again, she wasn't supported as much, so she ended up choosing, and she wasn't actually guided properly, so she ended up choosing GCSE subjects like music. My sister isn't professionally trained in music. She's only played like the drums like a few times. So she was encouraged by someone to choose music for GCSE, and also I believe travel and tourism. She wasn't really afforded the options of the other GCSEs, so there was plenty more she could have done, like religious studies, which I know she was very much interested in, and which I chose because I moved in year 7, so I definitely had more time to think about what I wanted to do and what I wanted to study. But for her, because she came in year 10, she wasn't guided properly and she couldn't choose the right GCSEs she required. Luckily for her, she chose your STEM subjects, maths, the compulsory ones, maths, English, which allowed her to choose A-level subjects that she wanted to. But again, just like I said before, the proper guidance wasn't there for her, and like because we were kept into a system where they didn't know what to do with immigrant kids, for example. For them, we were just another number, or we just need you guys to do so and so. There wasn't actually a support system in place for immigrant kids to actually give us the proper guidance. Exactly what happened with me, like I mentioned before, being put into lower sets. There wasn't a method of proper testing our intelligence per se to actually make sure we were kept in the right sets, because going back to what I experienced, I definitely missed out on a lot of opportunities by being placed in lower middle sets, because it took another year or so for my potential to really come out. But yeah, going back to my sister, it was really difficult for her, because music, she utterly didn't do well in it, because she'd never really done theoretical music or music in that sense, because we're coming from a different background where we don't really learn about music like they do here in the UK. So for her, that was quite difficult to take in. But luckily for her, again, moving forward into her academic life, she was able to rectify those mistakes that happened during GCSE. But again, she lost opportunities because she didn't have the proper guidance for that.
Thank you so much, Modupe. Right, we have got more to go through, but I'm aware we've got 10 minutes left, so I might open the floor to questions if that's all right, and then hopefully we can touch on some of the sort of like the female aspects as we go through. So if there are any questions, please fire away, and I will stop sharing my screen so I can see everyone.